Cole, you call that standing at attention? The drill sergeant's voice cracked through the humid barracks like a whip. Every head turned toward me. Boots scuffed against the concrete floor as a ripple of laughter broke out. Someone muttered, "He looks like he's about to faint." Another voice added, "This kid's not soldier material." I wanted to swallow the burn in my throat, but my hands were trembling too much to hide. That was the first time I realized. They weren't just testing me. They wanted me broken. I'd come here carrying my father's dog tags tucked under my undershirt like a secret. He'd been Army, tough as nails, and I thought wearing those tags would give me some of his grit. Instead, all I got were sideways glances and whispers. They saw a skinny kid from a factory town, no sports medals, no loud swagger, just Daniel Cole, the recruit who never spoke up. In this world of barked orders and sharp-edged pride, silence was treated like weakness. That night in the barracks after lights out, I lay there listening to the sounds of boots dropping from bunks, muffled jokes traded under breath, someone cranking out last-minute push-ups. My body ached from the day's punishment drills, but it wasn't the pain that kept me awake. It was the humiliation. Corporal Johnson had accidentally spilled his tray all over me at chow, the gravy soaking my fatigues, the laughter echoing across the mess hall. It burned deeper than the blisters on my feet. I cleaned it up without a word. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe silence makes you an easy target. The next morning, inspection rolled around. Rows of boots lined up sharp, uniforms pressed tight, eyes locked forward. When Sergeant Miller stopped in front of me, his lip curled. "Private Cole, is that a wrinkle in your sleeve, or are you just allergic to discipline?" My ears burned. I heard snickers down the line. He leaned close, voice like gravel. "You're dead weight, son. You'll get someone killed." Those words sank deeper than his spit spraying my face. Dead weight, a soldier's worst label. I wanted to shout back, to prove him wrong right then, but my throat closed up. All I did was hold my stance, staring past him at the flag outside the window. Red, white, and blue flapping in the breeze like it belonged to everyone else but me. He moved on, barking at another recruit. And just like that, the barracks exhaled, the tension broken, the moment forgotten by everyone except me. But not everyone laughed. From the corner of my eye, I caught Lieutenant Ramirez watching. He didn't smile, didn't step in, didn't defend me. He just studied me with that quiet, unreadable gaze of his. Like he was measuring something no one else saw. Maybe pity, maybe curiosity. But for 1 second, I felt less invisible. Later that week, during a forced march in full gear, the sun punished every step. My rucksack bit into my shoulders. Sweat stung my eyes. Johnson marched just behind me, whispering loud enough for others to hear. "Hope Cole doesn't collapse. We'll be dragging his sorry carcass to the finish line." Laughter followed, tired but sharp. My fist clenched around the straps. Every insult dug into the rhythm of my boots striking dirt. Left, right, left. Don't break. Don't give them the satisfaction. We made it back to base. My uniform soaked through, knees aching like fire. I fell onto my cot, too drained to move. Harris, the youngest in the platoon, slipped me a canteen without a word. I nodded, but he looked away quickly, afraid to be seen siding with me. Still, that small gesture was enough to keep me steady. Sometimes it only takes one person who doesn't laugh. Night fell. Barracks chatter buzzed around me. Guys betting on who'd wash out first. My name came up more than once. I pulled my father's dog tags from under my shirt, pressing the cold metal into my palm. His voice echoed in my head. "Never break, son. Doesn't matter what they say. Just stand your ground." So I lay there in the dark, my humiliation replaying in sharp detail, but my grip on those tags steady as stone. The truth? I hated every second of it. The ridicule, the constant pressure, the way my silence made me a target. But deep down, I knew something they didn't. All their noise, all their swagger. It was just smoke. I was learning to carry weight they couldn't see. The weight of staying calm, of standing still, of swallowing fire until the right moment came. They wanted me broken. But every insult, every laugh, every shove was forging something else instead. What I never expected was how soon that moment would come. The one that flipped everything upside down. The day the same people who mocked me would look at me with different eyes. Respect, fear, maybe even gratitude. But that's another part of the story. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The rain came down hard that night, drumming against our helmets like someone pounding a war drum. We'd already been running for hours, packs heavier than our bodies wanted to carry, boots sucking mud with every step. The sergeant's voice cut through the storm. "Keep moving, this ain't recess." My lungs burned and every step felt like dragging chains, but I forced myself not to drop back. Johnson was right behind me, and I knew he'd pounce on any sign of weakness. "Careful, boys," he shouted loud enough for the squad to hear. "If Cole drops dead, we'll all trip over him." Laughter followed, sharp and cruel, almost louder than the storm. I kept my eyes down, pushing through the mud, each insult sinking deeper than the rainwater soaking my uniform. By the time we got back to the base, we were ghosts of ourselves, uniforms clinging like rags, boots squishing with every step. Most guys collapsed onto their bunks, groaning. I sat quietly, pulling off my boots, pouring water out like I just emptied a bucket. Johnson looked over with that smirk. "You survived, Cole. I was betting you'd quit halfway." He laughed and a few joined in. My throat tightened, but I didn't bite back. Instead, I lined up my boots, wiped them down, and set them by the bed. Order, discipline, my way of keeping dignity when they wanted me in pieces. Across the room, I caught Harris watching. He didn't say anything, just gave a small nod before turning back to his bunk. It was the kind of gesture that didn't seem like much, but in that world, it meant everything. The next morning, the air smelled of powdered eggs and burnt toast in the chow hall. Soldiers were lined up with trays, voices bouncing across the mess hall in an endless wave of noise. I carried mine to a corner, sat alone like always. Johnson's voice cut through the clatter. "Hey, Cole, you gonna choke on your food too?" The table erupted. Someone added, "Maybe we should cut his food into little pieces." My face burned. I focused on my tray, eating slow, steady bites. Every laugh stabbed deeper, but I forced myself to keep my posture calm. One of them flicked a piece of bread at me. It landed on my tray. I didn't look up, just kept eating. Harris, sitting a few rows down, shook his head, muttering something to the guy beside him, but he didn't speak up. No one did. And maybe that was worse than the laughter. Later, we had rifle maintenance. Rows of us sat on benches, rifles broken down, cleaning kits spread out. Johnson bragged about his weapon, talking like he could field strip it blindfolded. I stayed quiet, working methodically. Every piece, every spring, every pin, precise, deliberate. Miller walked by, glancing at the rows. When he got to me, he paused. My rifle gleamed, reassembled cleaner than regulation required. He didn't say a word, just moved on. But Ramirez lingered a step back, watching, not smiling, not praising, just watching. That silence meant more than any compliment. I knew he'd seen. The days blurred into sweat, dirt, and humiliation. We were ordered into extra drills after dark, push-ups until arms shook, runs until stomachs turned. Every time I thought I'd collapse, Johnson's voice was there, stoking the fire. "Don't slow down, Cole. We don't got time to carry a corpse." The others laughed. My fists clenched, but I pushed harder, each insult fueling another rep, another lap. When the squad finally dropped onto the ground, gasping for air, I stayed up for a few more push-ups. My arms screamed, but I wouldn't quit. Not in front of them. Not ever. One night after punishment drills, I sat outside the barracks, rain dripping off the roof, holding my father's dog tags. I rubbed the edges smooth with my thumb, whispering the same words I'd carried since the day I shipped out. "Never break." The door creaked open, and Harris stepped out, handing me a canteen. He didn't say much, just, "You okay?" I nodded. He gave a half smile, awkward, then slipped back inside. For the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely alone. But the pressure never let up. The more I endured, the more Johnson pushed. He couldn't stand that I never snapped. During one drill, he shoved me when the sergeant wasn't looking, sending me sprawling in the dirt. Laughter roared around me. My face pressed into the gravel, grit cutting my cheek. I got up, brushed off, and got back in formation. Johnson's smirk faltered for just a second, like he couldn't figure out why I hadn't exploded. That was the first crack in his armor. The climax came during a late-night endurance test. Packs loaded, we were ordered to run laps around the training field in the pouring rain. Soldiers dropped one by one, gasping, muscles giving out. Johnson barked at me as we ran. "Quit already, Cole. No shame in being soft." I didn't answer. My chest burned, my legs numb, but I kept going. Then it happened. Johnson stumbled, twisting his ankle. He hit the ground hard, face twisting in pain. The laughter died instantly. The squad froze, unsure. He looked up at me, pride crumbling, eyes wide with panic. The sergeant screamed, "Keep moving! Don't stop for anyone!" But something inside me shifted. I turned back, hauled Johnson up, slung his arm over my shoulder. His weight nearly dragged me down, but I kept running. Step by step, dragging both our bodies through the mud. The squad stared, silent. No more laughs, no more insults. Just the sound of rain hammering down and my boots pounding mud. Johnson didn't speak, didn't mock, didn't fight. His face was pale, jaw clenched in shame. I carried him across that finish line, both of us collapsing into the dirt. The silence afterward was deafening. For the first time, no one dared laugh. No one dared mock. They'd seen something they couldn't unsee. Johnson, the loudest mouth in the platoon, had been carried by the man he called dead weight. That night, the barracks was quieter than usual. Johnson limped past my bunk, eyes down, no smirk on his face. Harris gave me that same nod as before. But this time it felt different. He wasn't just noticing. He was respecting. And though the sergeant never said a word, I saw Ramirez again, standing in the shadows, arms crossed, watching me like he'd been waiting for this moment. My humiliation hadn't vanished, but something had shifted. For the first time, I felt the ground tilt just slightly in my favor. The laughter was fading. Respect was taking its place. And deep down, I knew the real test hadn't even begun yet. The morning of the live fire drill started like any other, but the air felt heavier, almost electric. The barracks was buzzing as the squad pulled on their gear, rifles checked and rechecked. Johnson was back to his usual self, smirking and tossing remarks around like grenades. "Hope you're ready, Cole," he said, slapping his magazine into place. "This ain't another jog in the rain. Today, you'll finally prove your dead weight." A few laughed. The same old chorus I'd been hearing since day one. I didn't answer. I just tightened the strap on my helmet, checked my rifle again, and stood ready. Harris glanced my way from across the room, his look quick and quiet, like he wanted to say something, but didn't dare. That silent support was enough to keep me grounded. We filed onto the range, the sound of boots striking dirt in perfect cadence. The sergeant barked commands, his voice raw. "This drill simulates chaos, smoke, noise, confusion. You freeze, you die. You panic, your brothers die. You complete the mission, you live. Understood?" A sharp, "Yes, Sergeant," echoed back. My stomach tightened, but not from fear of the drill. It was from the eyes I felt burning into me. They all wanted me to fail. That was the expectation. The guy who sat alone at chow, the quiet one, the outsider. The drill began with smoke grenades tossed across the field. White clouds swallowed the targets, blinding us. Gunfire cracked overhead, live rounds whizzing just above the sandbags. My heart pounded as the squad scrambled, each man yelling over the noise. "Move left! Cover me! Reloading!" It was chaos, pure and raw. And then it happened. Johnson's rifle jammed. Right in the middle of the drill, his weapon locked up. He froze, cursing, pulling at the bolt, but nothing moved. He was dead weight now, exposed in the smoke. The squad panicked, shots fired wild, men dropping to the ground. Miller barked from the observation tower, his voice thunder. "Keep moving! Stay in formation!" But nobody listened. Order collapsed in seconds. Johnson looked at me, panic flickering in his eyes for the first time. "Cole, help me! My weapon's jammed!" His voice cracked, desperate. I moved without thinking. Dropping beside him, I shoved his hands away, cleared the chamber, slammed the bolt back. The rifle clicked ready. There, don't freeze, move! I shoved it back at him. His face was pale, sweat mixing with grime, but he nodded and stumbled forward. Around us, the squad was losing its head. 2 recruits were stuck behind cover, afraid to move. Another had dropped his rifle completely, crawling on his belly. For a second, I thought it was all over. We'd fail as a unit, and Miller would eat us alive. Then something clicked. All the insults, all the laughter, all the humiliation. It burned into fuel. I heard my father's voice, steady in my memory. Never break, son. Control the moment, or it controls you. I stood, ignoring the bullets snapping overhead. Cover fire on the left. My voice cut through the chaos, sharper than I thought possible. The recruits froze, looking at me. Now, I barked, and they moved. Johnson fired toward the left flank. Harris covered the right. I grabbed the 2 stuck behind cover and yanked them forward. Get up, move, follow me. My body moved like it had been waiting for this all along. Every lap in the rain, every insult, every sleepless night, it all came together here. The drill intensified. Smoke swallowed us whole, but I could see patterns. Where the shots came from, where cover was thin, where we needed to move next. On me, I shouted, leading them forward. We bounded across the mud, firing in bursts, leapfrogging, just like in the manuals. And for the first time, they listened. Nobody questioned me, not even Johnson. Harris was right behind me, breathing hard, eyes locked, his trust clear in every step he took. We hit the next objective, cleared the trench, and advanced toward the final bunker. My chest was on fire, my arms trembling from the weight of my rifle, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. We were in this together now. At the last bunker, one of the recruits slipped, dropping flat into the mud. His rifle slid out of reach. Johnson, of all people, reached for him, but froze, paralyzed again. Without thinking, I covered the recruit, firing short, controlled bursts, dragging him back up by his collar. Get it together, I barked, shoving him forward. His eyes were wide, but he nodded, stumbling back into line. We reached the bunker as a unit, stacking on the entrance like we'd drilled. I gave the signal, hand raised, then dropped. We stormed in, clearing it with precision. The last target dropped. Smoke cleared. Silence. For a moment, no one moved. The range echoed with nothing but the sound of our breathing. Mud clung to our boots, sweat dripping into our eyes. Then slowly, heads turned. They were staring at me, not with ridicule, not with laughter, with shock. Johnson's face was pale, eyes still wide from what he'd just seen. Harris was grinning, exhausted but proud. Even Miller up in the tower had gone silent. That silence was louder than any insult I'd ever taken. Then the sergeant's voice cracked the air. Platoon, freeze! We locked in. He came down from the tower, boots heavy, eyes locked on me. My heart pounded, expecting another insult, another lash of humiliation. Instead, he stopped right in front of me, his eyes narrowed, studying me like he was seeing me for the first time. Then he barked, Who gave the orders during the breakdown? No one spoke. I stood silent, waiting. Harris finally said it, his voice steady. Cole did, Sergeant. Miller's eyes cut back to me. For a long second, the whole squad held its breath. Finally, he nodded once. Just once. Good work. And he walked off. No speech, no praise. Just those 2 words. But in that world, they meant everything. The squad shifted awkwardly, glancing at me. Johnson looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. His pride was shattered, replaced with something else. Shame, maybe. Gratitude he couldn't admit. Harris clapped me on the shoulder, his grin wide. Told you they'd see. My legs felt like they'd give out, but inside something stood taller than it ever had before. All those nights of ridicule, all the times I'd swallowed their laughter. It had led to this. Not revenge, not even pride. Just proof. Proof I belonged. That night in the barracks, the air was different, quieter. Nobody threw jokes my way. Johnson limped past my bunk, eyes down, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. Thanks. It wasn't much, but from him, it was everything. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Harris sat on his bunk polishing his boots, and when our eyes met, he gave that nod again. Only this time, it wasn't pity, it was respect. I lay in my bunk staring at the ceiling, the dog tags cold in my hand. For the first time, I didn't feel the weight of them as a burden. They were a reminder. I'd carried my father's words into the fire and come out the other side. Never break. And in that silence, with the barracks breathing slow and steady, I knew one thing for certain. They'd never look at me the same again. And neither would I. The morning after the drill, the barracks felt like a different world. Nobody laughed when I walked past. Nobody whispered when I sat down at the end of the table in the chow hall. Even the usual clatter of trays and chairs felt muted, like the air was heavier than before. I could feel their eyes on me, but not in the same way as before. It wasn't ridicule this time. It was something they weren't ready to admit yet. Shame. Johnson sat across the hall, his ankle wrapped tight, poking at his food with no appetite. When our eyes met, his smirk was gone. For the first time, he looked away first. That silence from him said more than words ever could. But it wasn't forgiveness yet. It wasn't respect either. It was tension, the kind that hangs in the air before a storm. I knew better than to think one moment erased everything. In the military, your reputation is built one day at a time, and I'd spent weeks at the bottom of the pile. Still, the cracks were there, and I could feel them widening. Later that day, Miller gathered us in formation. His boots slammed against the pavement as he walked the line, eyes sharp. "Yesterday was a disaster," he barked. "You lost control. You broke formation. You let panic rule. That is unacceptable." His voice was thunder, rolling across the field. Every head dropped, every back stiffened. Then he stopped in front of me. For a long second, he didn't speak. The squad held its breath, waiting for the hammer to fall. Finally, his voice dropped lower, slower. "One of you didn't break. One of you stepped up when the rest of you fell apart." His eyes locked on mine. I didn't blink. I didn't dare move. Then he turned to the squad. "Cole carried you yesterday. Remember that." The silence that followed was heavier than any punishment. No laughter, no whispers, just the sound of pride stinging in every man who had once mocked me. The shift didn't happen all at once, but it happened. In the barracks, Johnson finally muttered, "Thanks," as he limped past my bunk. He didn't say it loud. He didn't make eye contact, but he said it. Harris caught the moment, and his quiet grin told me everything. He'd been waiting for this. He was the one who first believed I had something in me. Now he wasn't alone. The next test came quicker than I expected. A timed obstacle course, mud pits and rope climbs, walls too high for most to clear alone. The squad lined up, nerves buzzing. Johnson muttered, "I got this," trying to sound like his old self, but the edge was gone. When the whistle blew, chaos exploded. Men dove into the mud, scrambled up ropes, cursed when they slipped back down. I moved steady, focused, climbing, crawling, never rushing, but never hesitating. Halfway through, one of the newer recruits slipped from the wall and landed hard, twisting his knee. He tried to get up, but pain locked him down. Johnson hesitated, looking back, torn between pride and fear. I didn't think. I doubled back, pulled the recruit to his feet, and half-dragged him through the mud. The squad saw it. They all saw it. For weeks they'd called me dead weight. Now I was carrying theirs. When we crossed the finish, the recruit leaned heavy on me, his face pale. Miller's eyes narrowed as he looked us over. "That's what it means to finish as a unit," he said, his voice sharp but different this time. He wasn't tearing me down. He was building something up, and everyone felt it. The balance had shifted. That night in the barracks, the noise was back, but not the same kind. The laughter wasn't aimed at me anymore. It was lighter, easier, but still cautious. Johnson sat on his bunk staring at his boots, then finally spoke. "You didn't have to drag me yesterday," he muttered. His voice was low, almost embarrassed. I didn't look at him when I answered. "Yeah, I did." Silence hung between us, but it wasn't hostile this time. It was heavy with something else. Acknowledgement. He didn't argue. He just nodded once, slowly, and that was enough. The real moment came at evening formation. The sun dipped low, painting the sky orange, shadow stretching across the field. We stood at attention, Miller pacing in front of us. His voice cut sharp. A squad is only as strong as its weakest man. But yesterday, your so-called weakest man was your backbone. His boots stopped. He turned to face me. Cole, front and center. My heart thudded against my ribs as I stepped forward. Eyes straight, every muscle tense. The whole squad watched, their breaths caught. For weeks I'd been their punchline. Now every eye was waiting. Miller's gaze didn't waver. He squared his shoulders, voice carrying across the field. Outstanding work. That was it. 2 words, but when they came from him, they felt like a thunderclap. A reversal so sharp it silenced the entire platoon. Miller, the same man who once called me dead weight, had just put his stamp on me. No one dared laugh after that. No one dared question. It was the kind of moment that changed everything. As we marched back to the barracks, Harris nudged my shoulder. Told you, he whispered, his grin wide. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. The shift wasn't complete yet, but the tide had turned. Respect doesn't come easy in the military. You don't get it from words. You earn it in sweat, in silence, in moments that break men apart. I'd been broken in every way they thought mattered, but I hadn't stayed broken, and now they were starting to see it. That night, as I lay on my bunk, the barracks quieter than usual, I held my father's dog tags in my hand. The metal was warm from my grip. For the first time, they didn't feel like a burden I had to live up to. They felt like proof I was living it, and I couldn't help but think, maybe, just maybe, this was only the beginning. The last week of training crept up on us faster than I expected. The barracks had changed since those first nights when I couldn't even eat a meal without becoming the joke. Now, when I walked in, the room didn't go quiet with laughter. It went quiet with respect. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. But it was there. A space had opened up around me, not out of fear, but because they were still trying to figure out what to make of me now. Even Johnson. He still limped from his ankle, but the smirk was gone. In its place was something he wasn't ready to say out loud. Gratitude. Harris, though, never hid it. He'd sit by me at chow now. No hesitation. As if he'd been waiting weeks for the chance. That small change meant more than all the insults ever did. The final morning started before dawn. Boots thudded against the pavement as the platoon fell into formation for the last time. The flag was raised, the anthem played, and the air carried that weight of endings and beginnings all at once. Miller paced the line with his usual scowl, but this time his words carried something different. You came here soft. You came here green. You came here boys. Today you stand ready to leave as soldiers. His eyes stopped on me for half a second longer than anyone else's. No words. Just that pause. Enough for the whole squad to notice. Later that day, as we stood waiting for final evaluations, the moment hit. Ramirez, who had been watching from the shadows since the very start, stepped forward. His uniform sharp, his voice calm but carrying authority. He stopped in front of me, his eyes steady. Private Cole, he said, loud enough for the whole platoon. My chest tightened. Every man froze. Front and center. I stepped out, boots hitting the ground in rhythm, heart pounding in my ears. Ramirez looked me up and down, then gave a slow, deliberate salute. You didn't just survive this training. You led when it mattered. And that's what makes a soldier. The silence that followed was thunder. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Even Miller, who once called me dead weight, gave a small nod. It was the kind of moment that left the rest of the squad with nothing to say. Respect wasn't spoken, it was shown. And in that instant, I knew I had it. That night, the barracks was quieter than usual. The jokes, the shouting, even the arguments over card games. It all faded into the background. Harris sat across from me, polishing his boots until they gleamed. He glanced up, smirking. Guess you're not invisible anymore. Johnson walked by, slower than usual, his eyes catching mine for just a second. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I understood. Sometimes silence is the only apology that feels real. When the lights went out and the room sank into darkness, I lay on my bunk with my father's dog tags pressed into my hand. The metal was warm, familiar, but it felt different now. Not a weight, not a reminder of what I had to live up to, a reminder of what I had already done. I'd been mocked, doubted, shoved into the dirt. I'd carried insults heavier than my rucksack, but I never broke. And in the end, that's what turned everything around. Respect didn't come easy. It never does. But when it finally came, it was earned the only way that matters, through silence, sweat, and never letting go. And as I drifted off to sleep that night, one thought stayed with me. Maybe this was just the beginning, because the hardest battles weren't behind me. They were still waiting out there. But now for the first time, I knew I was ready. The last image I'll leave you with is this. The platoon standing in formation, the flags snapping in the wind above them. The same men who once mocked Cole now stand shoulder to shoulder with him, their eyes fixed forward. The drill sergeant, the one who called him dead weight, steps in front, pausing for just a second before giving the smallest, sharpest nod of respect. No speeches, no applause, just silence, the kind that speaks louder than words. And in that silence, Cole doesn't smile, doesn't gloat. He just stands taller, steady, the weight of his father's dog tags resting against his chest. That moment is burned into the memory of every man there, a reminder of what real strength looks like. And that's the lesson here. Life, especially life in uniform, will test you in ways that feel unfair. You'll be judged, underestimated, maybe even humiliated. People will laugh when you're weak, doubt you when you're quiet, and write you off before you've even begun. But as every soldier learns, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Actions speak louder than words, and when the time comes, silence under pressure can shake the ground louder than 1,000 voices. Cole never fought back with insults or fists. He fought with endurance, with resilience, and with the unbreakable will to carry others when they fell. And in the end, respect came. Not because he demanded it, but because he earned it. So to every soldier, veteran, or family member listening, remember this story when the world doubts you. Hold fast, never break, and know that honor isn't handed out. It's built in the quiet moments when no one is cheering. If this story touched you, share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Hit the like button if you believe in these values, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Until then, stay strong, stay steady, and remember, you're never walking alone.